Okay, let's talk about the most crucial part, I think, of your story. This is just my opinion. The start's fairly vital as well. And then there's the middle. That's kind of important too. But I think the ending is where the deep satisfaction comes from your storytelling. There are basically three standard kinds of endings in the Western storytelling tradition, for better or for worse. And I think it's actually fairly straightforward to work out what the ending of almost any story is by comparing it against these three possible ending types. Okay, but first things first. First, you've got to identify the central core problem or goal of your story. So, is the goal for the main character, to climb Mount Everest or to find true love, or is it overcome the villain? They're all story problems that are fairly typical, and yours might be more subtle than that. Sometimes there's a superficial problem going on with a subtle unconscious or subtextual problem going on simultaneously. So you might have someone who's trying to climb Mount Everest, but in psychological terms, they're trying to prove that they're a worthwhile human being. Okay, but whatever it is, basically your story is most likely going to be the unfolding of a person's attempt to overcome a problem. Now, basically in life, there are three ways that can go, and I call them up, down, and ironic. You can also have these anticlimactic endings, which I think are a bit of a dud and maybe a bit of a fizzer, but maybe they have their purpose as well. So it might be the exact thing that suits your story. But here's the process. Find what the true problem is that's being dealt with in your story, or the true problems, and then you've got to work out simply which ending type you want to employ. So, up ending, reaches the peak of Mount Everest. Down ending, dies in the process of trying to reach the peak of Mount Everest. So that's a tragic ending, which may be the most suitable ending to that story. And then there's the ironic ending, which is a mixed ending. It's basically somewhat up and somewhat down. So that might be a case where the person reaches the peak of Mount Everest, but achieves a Pyrrhic victory, achieves a victory where the cost was so great that it was barely worth it. Or the subtextual problem that they're trying to overcome isn't a success. So they physically reach the peak of Mount Everest and realize that they still feel like a worthless person. So basically, once you know the central problem of your story, what you can ask yourself next is simply, do I want this to end up so the problem is solved and everything's great? Do I want it to end down so the problem is not solved and possibly things are a whole lot worse than they were in the beginning? Or do I want to end this in a mixed, ironic kind of way? And these are often the most beautiful and interesting and truest to life endings, because basically when we try to solve a major problem in our lives, what tends to happen is we get some of the way, but not all of the way. In real life, we experience a lot of mixed endings. Even when we succeed 99%, it's still a mixed ending because there was a little bit of failure in there, 1% of failure. Mixed endings are very powerful, very rich kinds of endings that actually make us think for a long time afterwards about the story. Down endings are often the best way to achieve a change in the world. And then, of course, there's the upbeat story, the story that ends on a hopeful note. That really fuels our sense of hope in the world. Maybe overly romantically, but it does give us a little bit of extra hope because we've seen someone struggle with a difficulty and overcome it and achieve their hopes and dreams. And that gives us the sense that perhaps we could achieve our hopes and dreams as well. So, to work out the ending to your story, simply identify the core problem or problems, and then work out, are they A, resolved, up ending? Are they B, not resolved at all and perhaps made worse, down ending? Or C, are they partially resolved, partially not resolved, which will give you a mixed or ironic ending to your story? It's as easy as that.